Check one, two, three. Hey everybody, it's Michael Helms, also known as Michael the Sound Guy, and this is the Location Sound Podcast. You know, each episode we talk with location sound mixers, boom ops, and other industry pros about the various aspects of recording sound on location, whether it's for feature and independent films, TV commercials, interviews, any time where dialogue from actors is recorded. I started my career in the recording studios in New York City with some of the big artists back in the day, and later on projects for networks like HBO, Sci-Fi Channel, and the Cartoon Network. As time went by, I got out of the studio and began working in production sound. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, thanks for joining us. Okay, my guest today is a production sound mixer based out of Knoxville, Tennessee. Please welcome Alex Haralson.
Thanks, Michael. Great to be here.
All right, Alex. Well, you know, we've been talking with people about COVID and their experience, and you're starting to get back to work. So how's your experience been in Tennessee?
It's been good. It's work's creeping back in. There's still a few sound mixers and production people in Knoxville that are weathering the desert, but production's coming back. I've been traveling a bit, so I've mainly been working in other states with a production company out of New York, and rigorous COVID testing. We're FedExed a kit with a prepaid label that we do a Zoom chat with a nurse to supervise it and do the occipital lobe probe and send it back. We do the pre-production test a couple of days in advance. It's overnighted, usually with a day in between the test and travel. If we're running more than a few days, there are midweek tests, and then depending on where we go next, there may be post-production tests, but masks and distancing and cleaning gear, cleaning transmitters and IFB receivers and lavs in between people. But we're doing what we got to do to keep it safe and keep it running. And the productions I've been part of have been pretty successful so far. Actually, very successful. We haven't really had an issue.
What's been your routine in wiping down gear and prepping it for an actor?
I actually picked up on something from a previous episode of this podcast as I was looking around trying to find the right solution, something that was not abrasive and not very destructive, and I went with the hypochlorous acid. Start off with a little bit of citrus degreaser just to get dirt and sweat and especially adhesive goo off of lavs where needed, but hypochlorous acid is efficient. Contact time's like 2 minutes. So that's what I've been using to spray everything down and keep it clean. And then light use of alcohol pads with the little prepackaged alcohol squares when needed. But I'm really trying not to use rubbing alcohol for lots of reasons. Mostly because it can, I've had it actually like scratch and muck up the plastic windows to the LED screens on transmitters before, kind of discolor them, do some funky things. So, yeah, hypochlorous acid's been the thing, and citrus degreaser.
How do you hand that over to the actor?
I have clean bags for every actor, using the Orca, the clear Orca zipper pouches, and also some from Ursa as well. Once everything is clean, I pack the transmitter and the lav and some of the expendables and a couple of batteries into that bag and zip it up. And it's there until we put it on the talent with gloves, with mask and face shield. For client IFB, I actually ordered, you know, those little plastic tool bins that can hook onto like wall racks. They're stackable. They're just big enough to hold an IFB receiver. And I have blue bins and I have red bins. On the longer shoots where we're there for a long time, I put paper tape on each bin with one of the producer or whomever's name on it, and they have a red bin with their name on it. And at the beginning of the day, the clean IFB receivers are in the blue bins, and when they bring it back, they put it in the red bin, and there you go. That's how we keep track of what's clean and what needs to be clean.
Yeah, that's a nice little system going.
It works. It works well. We've got one big studio show that we do that's shot right outside of Knoxville that it's really helped in keeping track of that. And I do actually use the same bins for microphone and transmitters, I adjust the red bins just on the dirty side, because when they're clean, they go in the clean bags. But that way I can bring the bin over to the talent, or most of them actually learn where their tub is, and they take their mic and they put it in there, and I don't have to touch it until I'm gloved and spraying stuff down. So it's as contact free as we can keep it too.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about what's in your audio kit. So kind of give us an overview of what all you have in your bag.
Kind of depends on the show. A couple of them that I work, we actually bring in, we've got dual sound mixers, and the other mixer who works with me brings in matching bags so that we're completely redundant. And we're using 688s with Electro SRCs and SMDWBs. For IFB and those, we've got the old IFB T4s, and we're using R1As both for client monitoring and as camera hops, which is nice because you can program in the frequencies for both bags, and not only can the producers tap their blue button and hop back and forth between the two of us, we each kind of, between me and Jorge, keep up with two cameras. There's this 4-camera shoot, and as they move, if they move away from where I am and move over to where Jorge is, cam op just has to tap the blue button and flip over, and his scratch track is now coming from the other bag. My bag is a little bit slimmer, which my back appreciates. I've got the MixPre 10-2, which is a mighty little beast. I'm a fan of own small and rent big until there's a justification for spending the extra money. So I've got 6 channels of Electro A1 band with the SRCs, SMDWBs, and a couple of SMWBs as spares, and just for, when you got a mount in a hat or you need something with a slightly smaller transmitter. Cause 11s and Countryman B3s. And my IFBs are the R1Bs with an SMQV transmitter. And my camera hops are Sennheiser G3s. Then I've got a 6-channel box of the Sennheiser G4 EW512s, the ones that kick up to 50 milliwatts. They have dedicated headphone outputs that are separate, so they're really kind of great multitaskers. If you need a spare talent mic in a pinch, it's great. If you need an extra IFB system, they can function perfectly well as that with the headphone outs. And they can function as camera hops, so they're kind of good all-arounders just to have on hand in case you need it. My boom kit is built around a Sennheiser 8060. I love that thing. It's lightweight. It sounds great. Great off-axis rejection. I do have an NTG3 in the kit as a backup, and then AKG Blue Line CK93 hypercardioid if we move into an indoor environment where I need a slightly more compact mic or something where a shotgun mic isn't behaving quite right.
Now, what kind of bag do you like to use?
I have the K-Tech Stingray Small. Love it. And after using so many other bags over the years, I really, really came to love what K-Tech's been doing with their bag designs. It's easy to build. It's ergonomic to wear. And it really has changed, especially when I got the Stingray harness with the Exospine. I was on a shoot a couple of years ago and I had my old Portabrace harness, and I had taken a little break. We had some downtime, but not enough really to unhook and debag. And I sat down on a retaining wall and I tried to stand back up and just got a shooting pain down my right leg, and the muscles all just said nope. And the leg refused to lock in and prop me up. And it took me about 3 or 4 tries to get back up to where my muscles would engage. And that happened a couple of times. But as soon as I moved to that K-Tech harness, I have not had a single issue with that since. It's been fantastic.
When we have a heavy bag, I've had the same issue. It's just like you go and it catches and you're like, whoa, and it throws you off because you're not expecting it. So
yeah, that's one reason I like the MixPre. I'm just about to pull the trigger on an 888 just because the extra routing and some of the extra features are really, really nice. There's totally a value to having a mixer like that. But for so much that I do, the MixPre 10.2 is more than enough, and it weighs hardly anything. I've moved over to the smart batteries recently, ditched the NP1s, and added antenna distro with the Betso bow ties and the PSC RF multi, which is also nice because I just recently picked up a cart from Blackbird, and I've got some shark fins on the mast. So when I don't have to bag up, and I can sort of act like cart-based and drop the bag on there. I just repatch the antenna distro to those shark fins, and if I do need to bag up and run off for an OTF or grab something on the go, just have to flip the cables back real quick, and I'm good to go.
Are you really noticing a big difference with the Betso, with the bow tie?
I am. SRCs are great. One thing a lot of people comment on about them and have since their inception is they just don't quite have the solid range that the 411s had. And my other dirty little secret is that those Sennheiser 500s are all SMA modded. Actually, all of my Sennheisers are SMA modded. And I have thrown a channel of Sennheiser in the bag and connected it to that antenna distro and had zero issues with range up against the Electros when I needed a spare channel. I think with the bow ties and the PSC distro, you might get, because they're not amplified antenna, they're passive antenna. But I think still with the PSC, if I'm not mistaken, you maybe get like 1.5 or 2 dB of boost out of it. But it helps separate the antenna from the mixer recorder a little bit, where you can get RF spray off of your mixer. Mixers these days are just little computers. There's a lot going on inside those things. And you can get RF spray off of them. So by pulling those antenna away and putting them on the outside of the bag, it helps separate that as well, which improves performance.
And you definitely notice when you put the shark fins up.
Yeah, we were shooting on a wedding farm venue back in January, and I put that mast up in the air and a couple of football fields without issue, at least across a big open field toward the next buildings down. And it was a lot more than I can get with just the SMA whips.
Kind of tell us about your cart setup.
It's a bag-based cart, so I've got a top shelf for the bag. There's a sliding shelf underneath it, so if I do add a mixing interface, I've got room for it, or I can keep my iPad down there for Wingman or whatever. And then there's a lock box at the bottom, and enough space between the top of the lock box and the sliding shelf for a couple of Pelican 1450s or Apache 4800s. I've got both, and I keep 2 of them on the cart. One has all of my straps and lavs, and the other one has my electro kit, both the transmitters and the IFB receivers. And I just put a bungee cord. It's got D hooks on the top of the box. I got the Impact C-stand with the removable turtle base, and there are clamps on the back that he builds in. So you just put the C-stand pedestal in back there, and I got a T-bar from Manfrotto that's got 3 mounting points on it, and boom clamp on the side, and a convenient coffee cup holder on the other. Both things that are very, very important on set. One a little bit more than the other, but we do have to use the boom sometimes.
You had mentioned you were getting rid of your Comtex.
Yeah, I actually just sold my Comtech kit off yesterday. I'd moved to the Electro IFBs, and the new R1Bs are fantastic. They're solid built. I'm free of having to use 9 volts, which did not cause me to shed a single tear. The R1Bs use the LB50 rechargeable batteries, and they say a battery runs about 8 hours. So I've got a battery and a spare for every receiver, and will get me through a day. Just didn't need the Comtech anymore. It was surplus, especially since I've got that Sennheiser 500 kit that can be a client monitoring kit if I need it to be. If it's sitting on the shelf and not making you money, it's kind of a waste of space. So also have the the Electro IFB to pay off. So selling off the Comtech kind of helps with that.
All right. Did you have a big Comtech kit?
6 receivers.
Okay.
6 receivers and the little M2 16P7 transmitter. Never need many more than that. I've got 8 of the R1Bs for some of the larger sets that we run, but that's about the max that I've ever really ended up having a need. So I figure if I ever get on a show that needs a lot more, we'll rent for the show, but there's no point in owning that many more than I ever practically need on set.
All right. Let's talk about some of the projects you've worked on. You did worked on a feature called A Hard Problem.
I did. That one just premiered at CineQuest, they had a virtual premiere because Rona, so everything's still very much online. It was such a great experience. They came in from Los Angeles and shot here in Knoxville. I got connected to them through our Film Knoxville office. We have a really, really great, supportive and proactive film office here in town. And shout out to Kurt Willis, who is the director of Film Knox. He works to bring productions in, and he really works to advocate for the production community here. He got me connected to the film, and they hired me, and we shot for 5 weeks, parts all over Knoxville. The first almost 4 weeks, we were basically holed up in a lake house, which most of the film takes place in a house. And so we shot the first about 4 weeks there, and then finished off with some other spots around town.
Now, what was your primary role?
I was the sound department, me, myself, and I.
Okay. Yeah, I watched the trailer. It looked pretty good. So what were some of the miking setups you did?
It was mostly fairly straightforward. Lavs on the talent, and I used my CK93 more than I used a shotgun on that one. Because we were indoors, and it gave me a little more flexibility to hit some of the ceilings and clear headroom, and it just sounded a little bit better in the rooms we were in. I did use some plant mics. We had a couple of driving shots, taped some mics up to the back of the driver's seat, because those shots were always passengers in the back seat. Driver was never seen. But a couple of plant mics here and there, but nothing actually really that challenging as far as miking. Very, very straightforward. It's a wonderful film. It's a very quiet film in a lot of ways. So it was very focused on paced dialogue, and things just kind of move along without moving too fast. And it really just allowed for a simplicity in how I approached recording sound for that one as well.
Now, were you using straps on the talent?
I really love the Ursa straps, and I used to have a bunch of the company wireless mic belt with the separate belts and pouches, and I got the Ursa straps and have never looked back. They're so easy to work with. They hold their place. They help smooth out the bump really well. Mostly waist straps. I used a couple of thigh and calf straps depending on wardrobe, but really tried to keep it in the small of the back if I could.
Now, do you use any particular microphone concealers?
I really, really like the Ursa mini mounts. It's really kind of my go-to. I've got a pretty big tub of vampire clips as well, because sometimes there's one show that I work on that we shoot in a warehouse that has no climate control, and it gets really hot, and the talent just sweats right through adhesive. It doesn't matter what you put on them, they will sweat through it. And if they are profuse sweating people, the vampire clip becomes a go-to for that. But I really like the Ursa mini mount a lot. I'll still use the RM11s once in a while, but I really try to go with the Ursa mini mount first, because it's so easy to rig and it's really quiet and really effective.
Now, you had mentioned it was a pretty healthy production environment.
Oh, hands down. One of the best production experiences I think I've ever had. When they interviewed me to hire me, the producer said, "Now look, I've got a policy of no jerks on set. Can you live with that?" I said, "Live with it? I prefer that." Because the reality is, filmmaking's a team sport, and if you're going to go in grumpy and be a jerk to people, I think you're kind of in the wrong place. And we really held to that. It was such a congenial working environment, congenial set. We were all there to do the same thing, to reach the same goal. The cast were incredible. We had some really great actors they brought in for these roles, and quite a bit of local crew. That was a great thing, is that, they didn't just come in and pick a couple people from Knoxville. We actually had a healthy representation of local crew on the film. And the directors were really, really good at what they do. They also wrote the script, and the script was great. Yeah, they kept it jovial. We didn't take things too seriously enough to get the job done. And we were all there to do the best job we could do. But we also were able to laugh and joke around and enjoy spending 5 weeks together on this thing.
That's great. Now, were you able to stay at home, or did you guys on location a lot? Or?
Well, it shot in Knoxville. I went home to my own bed every night, which was nice.
Cool. You also worked on Moonshiners?
They've spun off Moonshiners with a couple of different shows. I work on a show called Master Distiller, which is a competitive moonshining show. They bring in 3 distillers and put them head to head. Generally theme each episode around a different kind of liquor that they have to distill. We've done gin and vodka and absinthe and cherry bounce and mountain brandy and many different kinds of alcohols.
That's interesting. And you get to try these, I guess.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
What's the show like when it comes to that? I mean, are you doing a similar kind of wire situation when you're miking talent?
This one's, the production pace can go from really, really hectic to a lot of hurry up and wait. They are distilling alcohol, and the distillation runs generally run 4 to 5 hours. And a lot of that is literally them sitting, watching their stills, waiting for something to drip out. But when we're doing the intros to the shows, the episode, intros to the segments, there's a lot of movement, a lot of activity. And we keep it really simple and streamlined. They're Cos 11s and SMDWB transmitters. And, we've got 2 identical sets. And we're working on parts of sometimes up to 3 different episodes at a time. We can have 2 episodes running distillation runs on each of the main sets. And then we can have contestants for a 3rd episode on set for biopack interviews and other segments that we shoot with them. So, sometimes we have that plus the 3 judges, and sometimes a guest judge. We have a dozen mics we got to get on in a very short time in the morning and snap in and be ready as quick as we can. But we've got 2 sound mixers running it, and Jorge and I are pretty much interchangeable on that, and we make a great team. He's gotten to be a really good friend of mine through that show. You get in and mic them up as soon as they walk on set because they're ready to roll. Because we pack a lot into a 12-hour day, even if some of that in the middle of the day is literally watching a fire burn and waiting for something to drip out of the condenser.
Interesting. Now, are you doing straps on those guys as well?
Not as much, actually. So a lot of the people on this show wear overalls, which is actually really nice. One of the easiest things to work with in the world as far as miking is overalls. We're dropping transmitters in their pockets most of the time. Overalls, you can put the mic right on the inside of the bib, just right below the placketing or the ribbing around the top edge, and it's in the right place and it's open, and the 2 snaps on the sides, you get the cable coming out below that second snap. And I mean, there's a little tiny cable jump sometimes there, right at the top of the pocket. But now I'm publicizing the secret. But if the viewers are looking for that, they're not watching the show. Shirts overlap, but we really try for expedience, just to treat it more like kind of old school reality, fast and efficient, and not try to overthink it too much.
All right. What do you guys do for Timecode boxes?
So we use the Betsos on Master Distiller. I have Tentacles in my kit, the Tentacle Sync E's. I love them. They're so easy to set up, so quick to sync through the app. They're solid. We've got the Betsos that we use on Master Distiller for all the cameras. Again, they're great. They work. They're solid.
All right. So you also work, was it Moonshiners Smoke Ring?
That's a new one that just premiered. We shot that in November, December, and January, and it's a barbecue competition, and it's another spin-off of the Moonshiners series. It's hosted by Tickle, one of the Moonshiners, and a guy named Tank Jackson, who is a hog farmer, lives down on Wadmalaw Island outside of Charleston. And 2 barbecue pitmasters go head-to-head each episode, just to see who does it better. And they're finding pitmasters who all know their stuff. One of the beautiful parts of the show is there's never a wipeout. There's never like a clean sweep. There's always 2 barbecuers who are making really good stuff. And it really is genuinely a competition from start to finish.
Yeah. So it's not an easy decision.
No, it's usually not an easy decision. And I've had most of the barbecue on the show, and it's all very good. Though I get home from 2 weeks on the road with that one and walk into the house, honey, can we just have salad tonight? Maybe some broccoli.
Oh, that's cool. And that's kind of a similar wire setup as well with talent. And
it is. This one, we go out on field segments. We actually go and visit the barbecuers at home and do traditional 2-camera ENG setups for those. And it's just me or there are a couple other sound mixers they pulled in on segments in Florida and a couple other cities. When we get to the competition days and we're set up at a venue for a few days to run the cook-offs, same guy from Master Distiller would bring Jorge in. We're running 4 cameras and 2 sound mixers. And again, it's a lot of them wear overalls, but it's really kind of the same miking mentality as it is on Master Distiller.
All right. Well, what's been your most favorite project you've worked on so far?
I actually have worked on so many productions I've really enjoyed that have just been, I get home and I'm ready to go out on that project again, whether it's going back to set the next day or it's waiting for the next round on the TV show to kick up. I have a hard time narrowing that down because I've worked on a lot of fun shows. I think if I had to pick one, that probably slightly edges out everything just because I made so many good friends on that set and we did a lot of good work and we really had fun doing it.
That's cool. Yeah, it's it sounds like you've got a mix. You've got narrative, you've got the reality TV, unscripted stuff or partially scripted stuff.
There's a lot of stuff that's not on IMDb just because it's stuff that never shows up. I've done ENG for like syndicated news magazines and shows like 2020. Way back, I worked in-house at Scripps Networks in the early 2000s and doing stuff for Food Network and DIY and HGTV. And, that was before IMDb really was a thing. And most of the stuff that I did there will never show up online as far as credit goes, but I did it. So,
well, how did you get started in production?
I always had a fascination with sound, and this actually goes way, way back. This is probably more than you'll ever want to know, but my uncle had a recording studio in Chattanooga for a long time. And when I was a little kid, I remember going visiting that, and I was mesmerized. You walk into the control room and there are all these buttons and knobs and sliders, and what does all this stuff do? And my grandfather had a wood shop and used to build us wooden toys. I actually still have a box of them downstairs. Trains and cars and helicopters, just old mountain style, simple wooden cutouts that are stained and varnished and they're gorgeous. But we played with those a lot growing up. And I wish I still had this. I can't find it. I don't know what happened to it. I actually had my grandfather build me, and this is ridiculously embarrassing, but I had my grandfather build me a little box with 4 sliders in it. So I had my little sound mixer that I could play with. I was like 5 years old and I loved that thing. And I used to pretend I was in the studio like my uncle and I'd just sit and move the sliders around. Didn't know what it meant. Didn't know what I was really doing, but I played with it and loved it. And I really, really wish I still had that. But I played with tape recorders for a long time. And at the same time, I had that classic little brown-handled Fisher-Price cassette recorder from the 80s. Oh, yeah. But, in high school, I got a 4-track cassette recorder and really started playing with recording and learning through mistakes mostly. You do something and it's not quite right, and you figure out how do you fix that? And then you start learning about outboard processing and, that's what a compressor does. Oh, that's why you get a better preamp. So I've always had a fascination with sound, and in 96, I saw a job posting for the local NBC affiliate and thought I'd take a shot. Why not? I had, in high school, had gotten into the technical crew for the theater program and did sound for the plays and musicals, and I thought, why not? We'll take a crack at it. It was a very part-time job. It was Saturday and Sunday mornings for 4 hours each day. And I was there for just a few months when one of the other sound people quit. She moved to Nashville, and they had an opening. And my boss called me in and was like, hey, we got this opening and we like you. You want to work full-time? Yes, please. And so I worked there for a few years and then moved into cable network TV from there. And the rest is history.
That's cool. Tell us about your website. You kind of have a unique name.
Product of the pandemic. I realized I really just needed to brand myself. I had about a 5-month stretch where I had absolutely nothing last year. And Master Distiller came back in around August and broke that spell, which was great. But I had all this time sitting around, and I thought, I need to do something productive, and I needed to brand myself. And I was thinking, and it started off trying to find something in a different language that meant hold for room tone. And I thought, let's poke around with Latin. That's a fun one because it's Latin. You can do anything with Latin. It's a dead language, but it's still very useful. And I started kind of pouring through dictionaries and trying to figure it out. And I came up with room tone, which is sono locus, the sound of the room. Latin doesn't actually have a generic word for room. They'll have words for kitchen and bathroom and bedroom, but they don't just have a generic room. So the closest you can get is the space around you or the location. So sono locus is the sound of the room, and it also translates to room tone, and it can also sort of be, location sound. So I fell in love with it, and I was like, this is my brand. And then I contacted my middle school Latin teacher. I was like, hey, Mrs. Eastwood, I need some help. And trying to find the right verb that was a command for hold. And she was very gracious in dusting off. She's retired and living in Maine, but dusted off the old skills. And I had reached out to a college student I knew in Chattanooga as well who took Latin and just kind of ping-ponged and tried to figure out what the best way to approach this was. And I finally settled on conquiescere or conquiesco, which is a verb that means to settle down or to be still or to be quiet. And so it became, how do you conjugate this into a third-person imperative? Plural. So, conquiescite sono locus is hold for room tone. And here I am.
That's clever.
Thanks.
All right, so the big question, tell us about your nightmare project that the worst one ever.
I've had a few doozies in my career. I worked on a syndicated news magazine once with a producer whose first words to me and the DP were, boys, I already know how I want this to look in my head, so just keep up with me. Which is producer speak for I don't know what I'm doing, and I refuse to communicate what I need to you, and it's your fault for not knowing it. The DP almost walked off of that job in the middle of the day. But there was one project I worked on that hands down is the thing of nightmares. And there was another sound mixer who said this about their worst experience. I can't remember who I'm quoting, but I'm going to quote it. So much yelling. They came in unprepared and really not equipped with the right personnel. They had failed to hire a couple of key people that could have avoided some things. We didn't have a unit production manager. We didn't really have an experienced AD. We didn't have an experienced focus puller. A lot of things that they just didn't have. And they didn't have a plan. The one-liner that they put out at the beginning of the project went out the window real quick, and they just started playing it by ear. And, we'd show up on time, me and the gaffer, who was a local guy, we'd show up on time at crew call and just sit and wait for an hour till they'd finally roll up. And that was routine. And then we'd sit for another 2 hours while they walked around trying to figure out, well, where are we going to put the camera for the first shot? So the days were long and erratic and unplanned, but there was a lot of yelling. Just so much yelling. And that really is a compensation for not having control over anything else that was going on. And there were conversations about how much of this do we really put up with before we say, see ya, we can't do this anymore. We didn't walk. Walking is always an absolute last resort, and it can backfire. But we stuck through it, and don't know that project will ever come out. Don't think it'll ever be done. But it just... every time we turned around, the wind was shifting direction, metaphorically speaking, and we were just getting dragged along and never really knew what was going on. Just no communication until we didn't know what we hadn't been told, and it felt twice as long as it was in production, just because every day going back to set, and I'm dragging my feet, just going, am I really going back into this? But the check's cleared, so there's that.
Sometimes, yeah. It's those ones, you've got the passion for, and then the other ones, it's a paycheck. You're going to do the best you can, and,
Yeah. They dragged us out of state for one scene that was kind of critical, and they hadn't really cleared the the location, and we showed up, and it was closed to the public the day we were there. So we had to punt and find somewhere else to be. But I've not ever been on as consistently demoralizing of a set as that show was.
Man, I'm depressed now too.
Fortunately, that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. Wow. Well, if you could offer some advice to somebody just getting started in production sound, what would you say?
You don't have to have a lot to get started. I think part of it is networking, and I hear this from your interviews time and time again, just finding somebody who will talk you through some things and teach you the way. I do not advocate going into a heavy amount of debt to build a top-end kit right out the gate. I think I mentioned earlier, I'm an advocate for own small and rent big until you have the work that justifies the expense and will pay it off in a reasonable amount of time. The bags we carry can run $30,000 to $50,000. There's no point in going that far into debt. It's not an if you build it, they will come situation. You have to build yourself up. It's all in marketing and getting your foot in the door and showing that you know what you're doing. And a lot of the stuff that you can start out with, corporate, small docs, indie films, you can do with a small kit. And my first bag was built around a Shure FP33. I bought my first kit in 1997.
I had one of those.
Oh, man. It was the industry standard until digital came along, and we realized that suddenly the noise floor of the mixer was not below the noise floor of the camera like it was with Beta SP. But, back then the standard was a 3-channel mixer with 2 wireless kits and a boom, and a spare wireless in there if you could ditch the boom and you needed 3 wireless. This is before we all had to have multi-track and time code and everything in the bag. But I still think there's something to be said for a kit almost on that size. You can start out with a MixPre 6.2, 2 or 3 wireless channels and a good boom kit, and you can get through a lot of stuff that'll pay and build up your network. You get clients back by knowing your stuff and doing a good job. And as that happens, word of mouth becomes one of your biggest marketing tools. References from the people you've worked with become one of your biggest marketing tools. And you can build from there. So get yourself some basics, but don't go into heavy debt to do it. And work from that. And I would say treat every purchase you make as a long-term investment. One of the other mistakes I see people make a lot when they're starting out in a lot of different aspects of film, whether they're looking at a camera kit or sound kit or whatever, is to buy something cheap with kind of a disposability mentality of it. Like, I'll just get this, it'll do me for now, and then I can buy something better. And you kind of waste money that way because there's no resale value on trash. And I think it's important to treat everything you get as a long-term investment. Start off with a couple of basic G4 wireless kits, great. Understand that when you can move up to Electro or Zaxcom or Wizzy or Audio Limited, you've got camera hops now. Treat it as something that is going to last and is going to be repurposed, will have a different life once you get to the next level. I keep a MixPre 6.2 on hand all the time. One of my favorite things to do if I get downtime, if I'm on narrative, if I'm on a feature or even some short films and we're on a day that's a lot of inserts and downtime for me, I will go around and grab wild sound effects to provide for post. I'll get, handy things around the location if I can. So if you start off with a small recorder, understand that you've got a great utility recorder as you move up. And the boom is going to be kind of the core. It's going to be the thing that can last longer than anything else in your kit. So that's the one thing that's really kind of like buy right if you can up front. But even at that, if you start out with something like an NTG5 or an NTG3, you've still got a great mic that stays in your kit, that's a backup that can be used for, you can keep it in your sound effects kit. There's always a life for that after. If you just buy it as, well, this will get me by and then I'll toss it and get something better, you're just wasting. And there are a couple of really great books out there. Rick Veer's Production Sound Bible is still a great read. And there's that new one out, Behind the Sound Cart. Another fantastic read. So read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest, and practice. Get on some short films. Get on some student films. Yeah.
Yeah. In our area, we have I'm in Florida, and so they have the Orlando Independent Filmmakers, and they have, I want to say, like 4 competitions that they do throughout the year, and I've participated in a number of those, and I try to get out and do some networking, and I'm always impressed, and I see the same people a lot, so I've worked with the same directors a lot, and everybody's a volunteer, and it's just those things. You get out there and you see the students that are coming out of school, and they're hustling, and they're working hard, and you can see who's going to make it and who's not. You can see somebody that's really passionate about it. And I always enjoy, I meet some new people, and so those are a lot of fun. But yeah, in the 48-hour film festival and all these different things, there's always something going on.
Yeah, we've got a pretty active film festival run here in Knoxville. And there's everything from complete hobbyist amateur filmmaking teams to some of the working professionals who take time to kick a short in just for fun. But yeah, local film festivals, that's a great point, because that's a great place to connect, meet some people, flex a little bit, just try to see what you can do on a hobby shoot for a weekend on a short film. But I'd say also, the other thing is, when you're starting out, is to show up on set knowing that you're starting out. I mean, be confident, but nobody cares about your short film. Once you're on your first feature or whatever, nobody cares about that short film you did. Go there to do the job and learn. And if you can get in as part of a sound department under a seasoned sound mixer, even better, because you're there to learn, and you'll learn a lot, and take every bit of that with you on to the next job.
All right. Well, Alex, as we start to wrap things up, if people wanted to connect with you online, what's the best way?
They can find me quickly on Instagram at SonoLocus.
All right. I want to say thanks to Alex Haralson for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
And I'd like to say thanks to everyone for listening. If you have questions or would like us to discuss a particular topic, email us at locationsoundpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, remember, sound is half the picture.